beloved chosen one. Your presence here is no coincidence. The number 000 on the thumbnail drew you to this video, stirring something deep within your soul in the Christian faith. 000 represents God's infinite presence and the completion of His divine work in your life. It signifies that He is the beginning and the end, sealing your journey with His eternal promise. You've been led to this moment by divine guidance, a sign that your trials are over. This message is for you, chosen one, to confirm that God has finished what He started. Have you wondered when your struggles would end? You clicked this video because your spirit sensed a breakthrough. This is heaven's declaration that you'll never face those battles again. The storms you endured were not to break you, but to build you for God's purpose. You're standing on the edge of a new chapter, where His favor shines brightly. This isn't just a video, it's a divine encounter, affirming that your perseverance has led to victory. Why are you here? Feeling this pull in your heart, could it be that God is speaking directly to you, confirming His plan is complete? The pain, the doubts, the hardships, they were all part of His refining process. Now, you're called to walk in His glory, chosen for a purpose that cannot be shaken. Stay until the end, as this message will awaken your spirit to His truth. Hit the like button. Subscribe to join thousands of chosen souls, and comment 000 with your city or country below to declare your readiness for this divine shift. Let's embrace the promise God has set before you today. This is your moment. Heaven is watching. The earth is responding. The storm has broken, and you are the reason why. So when the shouting fades and the dust settles, a deeper truth rises. The same weapon will never cut you twice. Once it shatters against something stronger than itself, its power is broken. That's what just happened to your enemies. They came at you with everything old, betrayals dressed in new faces, repeated heartbreaks disguised as fresh wounds. But you stood unbroken, enduring their onslaught. When their schemes failed, their obsession turned to rage. That's why they're unraveling now, because their strategies collapsed while you remained steadfast. Picture this: a boxer enters the ring, relying on a trusted move that felled all before you. But this time, the punch lands, and you stand firm. That moment shatters his confidence, not yours, rendering his tactic useless and his plan in disarray. That's what you've done. You exposed their limitations by surviving what was meant to destroy you. The pattern that once imprisoned you has lost its grip. The cycle starved when you stopped feeding it with fear, doubt, and reaction. You didn't respond the way you used to. You didn't fold. You grew. That's how the loop died, starved of your submission. Isaiah chapter 54 verse 17 proclaims, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." That promise didn't merely shield you. It shattered the enemy's blade. The storm didn't cease because its fury faded. It stopped because you outlasted it. Your silence now speaks louder than their clamor. Your peace, a stinging rebuke to their failure. They sought your collapse, but instead, they witnessed your breakthrough. Cycles are built on repetition, but survivors, they rewrite the pattern. That's what makes you dangerous now. The things that once triggered you no longer hold the same authority. What used to wound now hardens into armor. You've become immune to their old tactics because they don't have new ones. The enemy doesn't invent. He recycles. But recycled weapons don't work on a renewed mind. You've crossed the threshold where suffering loses its hold. No matter how fiercely it demands entry, it no longer holds the key. Picture suffering as an unwelcome guest in your home, wreaking havoc and claiming permanent residence. But its lease had an end date, and that time has expired. Its cries may persist, but they lack authority. The eviction is final, and you, chosen one, are reclaiming your space, still wondering why it felt endless, because pain's greatest tactic is illusion, convincing you it's forever. But like every storm, it had terms. It stayed only long enough for you to grow, to rise, to become. The moment you became too strong to fold, the contract lost its power to renew. Suffering didn't end because it got easier. It ended because you got wiser. Here's what most never see: pain was a visitor, not your identity. It carried lessons. But now those lessons live in your strength, and the visitor is gone. Let me take you deeper. Imagine the story of the woman with the issue of blood. Mark chapter 5, verses 25 to 34 recounts her story. 12 years of suffering, shame, isolation. Everyone gave up on her. But one moment of right contact with Jesus, and the bleeding stopped. That's the power of recognizing when your pain has reached its limit. She didn't wait for permission. She seized her freedom, and it met her in that moment. That's the shift you're experiencing now. Chosen one, your wounds, once your identity, now serve as reminders of your triumph. Your enemies are at a loss, not because they've devised new ways to harm you, but because their old methods are obsolete. Their once potent weapons crumble in their hands, and your strength unsettles them more than your silence. What's more, the law of heaven has declared it. You cannot be tried twice for the same sentence. Your suffering was real, but it served its time. It has no appeal, no extension, no hold over you now. Every storm, every betrayal, every tear, it was counted, not wasted. And when the final second ticked out, the judgment was issued overruled. The sentence is lifted, the chains are broken, the cycle is closed. Like a snake shedding its skin, you've outgrown the pain that once clung to you. It's now dead weight, and you've stepped free of it. Imagine a song stuck on repeat. The same heartbreak, setback, betrayal playing endlessly until the tape snaps. The song is over, replaced by silence. And in that silence, a new sound emerges: peace. This is why your future won't echo your past. The soundtrack has changed. The rhythm is different. And the old script has been thrown out. Some may still ask, but what if it comes back? It won't. Not like before. Because the contract is void. The key is broken. The door has swung open, and you're already on the other side. Your enemies see it now. That's why they rage. Not because they still have power, but because they lost it. You didn't just survive the storm, you emptied it. You didn't just escape the fire, you carry its ashes as evidence that it burned itself out trying to break you. You are living proof that pain has a limit, that darkness has a deadline, that the season that tried to bury you has already passed. You are not the same. You are free. Not because the storm stopped, but because you kept walking until it did. And nothing, not fear, not the past, not the enemy, can pull you back into a contract that God already marked fulfilled. But what if the weight you carried wasn't just yours? What if the battle was older than your lifetime? And now, chosen one, we arrive at the reason why it all felt so heavy, so unnatural, why your suffering felt deeper than the life you were living, because you weren't just carrying your own burdens, you were carrying the unfinished battles of those who came before you. This is a truth few grasp. Pain can be inherited. Families pass down more than names or traditions. They transmit trauma, cycles, curses, patterns of poverty, addiction, silent grief, and broken love for generations. No one had the strength to break the chain. The baton was dropped every time, the race unfinished, until you, chosen one. You didn't just face your own trials. You shouldered the burdens others couldn't bear. You absorbed the full weight of your bloodline struggles. And instead of collapsing, you stood firm, crossing the finish line where others faltered. Through you, the curse was broken. Psalm chapter 103 verses 17 to 18 mentions, "But the steadfast love of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting on those who fear him, to those who keep his covenant." That covenant is what you stepped into, and that's why the curse couldn't continue past you. Think of Joseph in Egypt, betrayed by family, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, wrongly imprisoned, yet he carried a legacy bigger than his suffering. When the famine came, he didn't just feed a nation, he saved the very family that once tried to destroy him. That's generational redemption. That's what you've done. You were the dam holding back generations of poisoned water. Every crack added by those before you finally burst. But you didn't drown. You absorbed it. You endured the flood. And now the ones who come after you will walk through dry ground. Your tears were never just your own. They were the final payment on a debt long overdue. What broke others didn't break you. And in that, the curse met its match. So if you've ever wondered why the weight felt disproportionate, why your life looked like a battlefield you didn't start, it's because you were chosen to end what others only survived. That's why the pain was so precise, so relentless. Generational strongholds don't fade. They demand blood, but you paid it in full. And now your bloodline is cleared. What once stalked your family stops here. What once destroyed your ancestors will not touch your descendants. Your survival wasn't just for you. It was for those who will never know the war you fought behind closed doors. But the transformation didn't halt there. Here's a deeper revelation. You didn't merely withstand the poison. You transformed it into strength. The betrayals, abandonment, and nights that nearly shattered you weren't meant to wound you alone. They were designed to taint you, to breed bitterness, emptiness, and cynicism. That's the nature of poison. But you refused to let it corrupt you. You turned it into something greater, like an alchemist. You took what was meant to destroy you and forged it into power. Bitterness into wisdom, loneliness into depth, humiliation into discernment. You emerged from the fire not as you were, but transformed, unrecognizable to those who sought your ruin. The flames meant to consume you now stand as proof of your evolution, not your destruction. The enemy anticipated scars. They didn't foresee your resurrection. And still the enemy didn't quit. They launched one final blow, a last desperate strike. The betrayal that hit deeper than all the rest. The heartbreak that felt like the end. The silence from heaven that nearly broke your faith. But here's the revelation. That was the last bullet, and it missed. What you just lived through wasn't random. It was warfare, not imagined, but orchestrated. The pressure, the loss, the suffocating darkness. It was their final play, their last attempt to take you down. And still you're standing. When the smoke cleared, you were still breathing, still moving, still becoming. And that's when they realized, it's over. They have nothing left. The enemy emptied its arsenal, hoping the final shot would be your collapse. But instead, it became their exposure, like Goliath, who laughed before David swung the stone. They underestimated the one they mocked. They didn't know that behind your stillness was the strength of someone who refused to break. That's why the battlefield is quiet now. Not because you lost, but because they did. And what happens when the enemy has fired its last shot and failed? Nothing lesser can ever succeed. So if you've been asking, will it come back? Will I have to fight that battle again? The answer is no, not like before, because the weapon has already been spent. The curse has already been broken. The fire has already been outlasted. Your survival is not a question. It's proof. The final blow came. I missed. And you walked through the aftermath with your identity intact, your calling clearer, and your strength multiplied. After the final bullet missed, something sacred happened. Survival didn't just prove your strength, it elevated you. You no longer stand where they abandoned you. The storm sought to bury you, but instead, it propelled you to a realm they cannot touch. Their arrows no longer reach you. Their insults fall flat. Their traps seem hollow. Their voices fade into the distance. Because they are distant, you've risen above their frequency. The pain that once pierced you no longer registers, for you've tuned your spirit to a higher signal, like a radio leaving static behind for a clear broadcast. That shift changed everything. Your endurance rewired your soul, sealing the wounds that once drew betrayal and manipulation. You didn't just survive, you soared beyond the battlefield. Psalm chapter 40, verse 2 states, "He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand." That's not just a verse, that's your life now. What used to grip you has no grip anymore. What once tempted you feels empty. Those who once knew exactly how to wound you can't even find the door to your heart. Now you've outgrown the war zone. Their rage echoes, but it hits nothing but air, like a storm roaring beneath a bird that now soars above the clouds. That bird is you. And while others remain tangled in old chaos, you've become untouchable. But the transformation didn't stop at elevation. It rewired your defense system. Where there once was vulnerability, there's now immunity. What used to infect you, manipulation, betrayal, deception, can't even get close. Your soul has been forged in fire, trained to spot patterns before they take shape. You no longer need evidence to sense danger. You feel it, seeing through masks before they slip. That's not fear, it's discernment, a gift honed by survival. Like a body that fought off disease and built immunity, your spirit now repels what once went unnoticed. Every scar became a lesson, every heartbreak a teacher, ensuring you'll never be blindsided again. Your trauma didn't just wound you, it became your greatest mentor. Picture a fortress once torn apart by invaders, brick by brick. It was rebuilt, this time with steel, reinforced, impenetrable. That's you. They expected weakness after the storm, but what emerged was armor. And now the old weapons snap in their hands. You've become a fortress, one they can't breach. And with that immunity came something deeper, something eternal authority. Because what was meant to kill you became your mark. You were supposed to break. You were supposed to disappear. But instead, you came back with evidence. A seal that says, I survived what was meant to end me. And that seal is permanent. It speaks even when you're silent. It testifies louder than your words ever could. Like a soldier returning from war, your scars aren't signs of failure, they're medals. Each one says, I stood face to face with destruction, and I didn't fall. That's why certain battles don't even chase you anymore. Darkness knows its failure. The enemy remembers what it threw and how it still wasn't enough. You were supposed to stay buried, but what they meant for death became your resurrection. You are now marked, not by pain, but by survival, not by the attack, but by the fact that the deadliest blow failed. 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 13 confirms, no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. And bear it you did. This is why life bends differently for you now. Doors open without explanation. Favor finds you without force. Protection follows you without prayer. Not because life suddenly got easier, but because your survival changed the atmosphere. You carry weight now, not the weight of pain, but of proof. You're the one the darkness couldn't keep, the one it couldn't break, the one it no longer has legal access to. You were never just a survivor. You are the evidence that some storms fail, that some curses break, that some chosen ones don't fold. They rise, and yet, after everything, you remain. You survived what should have erased you, what came for your voice, your future. Your very identity left you standing, not untouched, but undefeated. They wrote your ending in advance, confident you would fold under the weight of what was thrown at you. But your survival tore those pages from their hands. Most people don't make it out of what you've endured. It wasn't just one loss or betrayal. It was layers of destruction stacked to crush your will. Attacks engineered to strip your trust. Grief designed to hollow you out. Darkness meant to make you forget who you were. And still you rose, burned maybe, but not buried. Psalm chapter 34 verse 17 declares, the righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles. That's why your existence unsettles them. You weren't supposed to be here. The collapse was meant to be final. But what they thought was the end became your beginning. Their assumptions about your weakness exposed their own. You were never fragile. You were simply being forged. And now you stand as the contradiction. They can't explain the one who escaped what no one else could. It's like a prison built with no exits. The kind people whisper about, no one gets out. And then there's you. Bent bars, bruised hands, breathless but free. That's why the rules don't apply to you anymore. You've outlived the limits. You've proven destruction has a ceiling, and you've already passed it. But something deeper happened while you survived. Heaven intervened, because when your suffering became too much for this world to comprehend, your case was handed to a higher court. Every tear, every accusation, every injustice, they weren't forgotten. They were submitted as evidence, and the judgment came down, case closed. You've been ruled over by the highest authority. The chains are broken. The permission once granted to torment you revoked. What once had legal access to your life can no longer touch you. Isaiah chapter 54 verse 17 proclaims, "No weapon that is formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against you in judgment you shall condemn." This isn't just relief, it's release. That's why your atmosphere feels different. It's not just that things are better. It's that the verdict shifted reality itself. You're not guessing whether it's over. It is over. What authority no longer has standing. The order for your freedom wasn't emotional. It was eternal. And once that verdict came down, it did more than free you. It crowned you. Because what they mistook for punishment was really your induction into power. You weren't merely tested, you were initiated. Your identity reshaped through a sacred process. The fire wasn't random, it was a divine ritual. Each tear, each shattered illusion, each stripped of comfort forging you into someone unrecognizable to your adversaries. You didn't survive just to prove your strength. You were being equipped to wield authority, like David before Goliath. Your private struggles were no detour. They were the proving ground where your scars became louder than any title. Your presence now carries an authority that needs no applause. 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 10 confirms, "After you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast." This is why you don't react the same. You don't walk the same. You don't speak the same. Because you're no longer who you were before the fire. You entered as a soldier. You emerged as a commander. And now the truth, they'll never say out loud. They're exhausted. Every curse, every scheme, every whisper designed to break you cost them something. Darkness doesn't operate for free. It trades energy for influence. And the more they obsessed over your fall, the more they drained their own reserves while you rebuilt yourself in silence. They burned themselves out chasing your collapse. Now their tricks are brittle. Their plans feel predictable. They no longer have the strength to fight you, because they already gave everything they had and failed. Every failed attack was energy they won't get back. You didn't just outlast them, you depleted them. It's like an army that fired every weapon, emptied every reserve, drained every last tank, only to find their target still standing and worse, still rising. That's why they rage in silence, not because they still have power, but because they've lost it all. So here you stand, not only undefeated, but untouched by anything lesser. What was meant to bury you became the proof that you are unshakable, untouchable, and unstoppable. Your scars aren't marks of survival. They are seals of authority. That's the final truth. You've already won the battles that were designed to erase you. And now there's nothing left to fear. The arsenal is empty. The trial is over. The fire has passed. And you are still here, still standing, still becoming. And this story, your story, is just getting started. Before we close today's message, I want to seal this word with prayer. This is not just a closing. It's a declaration, a spiritual shift, a moment of alignment with everything heaven has already written about you. So wherever you are, take a deep breath, open your spirit, and let this prayer find its way into the places that still need healing, fire, and freedom. Father God, we come before you today with humbled hearts, grateful for your unshakable love, your relentless pursuit, and your divine protection that covered us even when we didn't realize it. Lord, thank you for pulling back the curtain and revealing truth where there was once confusion. Thank you for shattering the illusions built to bury us. What they meant for harm, you turned for good. What was designed to destroy us only revealed how deeply you've called and kept us. Father, for every storm that was meant to break us, we give you praise. For every betrayal that pushed us into isolation, thank you for using it to bring us closer to you. For every chain that once bound us, we now lift holy hands as proof that you are still the God who breaks cycles and rewrites stories. Today we declare the old battles are finished. The old pain is expired. The verdict has already been issued. We stand in the authority of your word. We step forward, not as victims, but as vessels, anointed, refined, and resurrected. We decree that no weapon formed against us shall prosper, and every word spoken against us in judgment is condemned, because you have ruled in our favor. Let every generational curse be broken. Poverty, fear, addiction, abandonment, shame. Let the line be drawn today. The curse ends here. Our children will walk in freedom we fought for. Our legacy will be rooted in righteousness, not regret. God, where there was bitterness, plant wisdom. Where there was exhaustion, restore strength. Where there was fear, release faith. Let every scar on our soul become a seal of authority, proof that we walked through fire and did not burn. Holy Spirit, elevate our frequency. Tune us to heaven's voice. Let us no longer react from old wounds, but respond from renewed discernment. We declare that our spirit is now immune to recycled weapons. The enemy no longer has legal access. The story has changed, and we will not go back. Lord, bless every viewer who hears this prayer. Let it stir something deep within them, a divine reminder that they are chosen, covered, and commissioned for more. May your presence fill their room, their heart, and their next steps as we rejoice in the victorious truth that you, chosen one, have conquered the trials designed to shatter you. A new and radiant chapter dawns, unveiling the awe-inspiring power of your divine purpose. You walk through the fiercest storms, emerging not merely as a survivor, but as a beacon of unyielding strength. Your spirit forged in the fire of God's promises. The battles you've overcome are now a testament to your resilience, marking the end of cycles that once sought to bind you. But this is only the beginning of your story. Now, a greater revelation awaits your presence, carries a divine authority so potent that it shakes the foundations of opposition. Your haters, once bold in their schemes, are now scattering, unable to withstand the radiant light of your God-ordained destiny. Join me as we explore the extraordinary reality of your influence, why your adversaries are retreating in fear, and how your unique calling positions you as a force unlike any other in the eyes of heaven and earth. God's chosen ones. No one has ever been so dangerous like you. Your haters are running away. You're off the grid, and that's why they can't touch you. Chosen one. Have you ever wondered why no one seems able to figure you out? Why people try to label you, yet nothing fits? Why their plans to manipulate or diminish you always end in confusion or collapse? It's not because you're invisible. It's because you're untraceable in their system. You're off the grid. You don't play by the same rules they do, and that terrifies them. You're not just outside the box. You were born to burn the box to ash. They thought you were another chapter in their little book of predictable outcomes. But what they didn't expect is that you were the plot twist. You're the glitch in their matrix, the code they couldn't rewrite, the anomaly they couldn't contain. You don't need to raise your voice to make an impact. Your silence alone has caused more panic than their loudest threats. Why? Because your power doesn't operate within their realm. You are not governed by algorithms. You are guided by alignment. John chapter 3 verse 8 states that the wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. Like the wind, you move unseen but undeniable. You don't just survive in the shadows, you shape them. Take Prince, the music legend. He defied the system that tried to own his identity, even changing his name to a symbol when labels tried to claim him. He went off the grid and redefined the industry on his terms. And just like that, chosen one. Your refusal to comply is not rebellion, it's revolution. So, have you been made to feel like the enemy just because you wouldn't fold? Have you been isolated, attacked, misunderstood just for being yourself? That's not rejection. That's confirmation. Because you weren't created to be a puppet on strings. You were chosen to cut the strings altogether. While they scrambled to conform, you were sent to confront. While they studied the script, you were sent to rewrite the entire narrative. You were never meant to blend in. You were born to disrupt the loop that traps souls in mediocrity, fear, and programmed submission. You don't just threaten their control, you expose it. Romans chapter 12 verse 2 confirms that you should not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You refused the pattern, you became the renewal. Let's talk about Malala Yousafzai, shot in the face for simply demanding education. She didn't just survive, she rose, while the world tried to silence her. She used that silence as fuel. She didn't conform, she transformed, and so have you. But here's the trap. Are you still questioning your light? Are you still wondering if you're imagining the shift around you? Stop. The battlefield wasn't chosen by accident. You were assigned to it. When heaven appoints a soul to shift the atmosphere, no crowd approval is required. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be light. And light exposes everything they'd rather keep hidden. That's why the attacks feel constant. That's why the betrayals are sharp and the isolation is deep. Because you're not a threat with an army. You are the army. Your alignment alone is divine interference in their corrupted program. Isaiah chapter 54 verse 17 declares that no weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment, you shall condemn. That's not a hope, that's a decree, and it has your name on it. Look at Colin Kaepernick. His silent protest sparked global conversations. He didn't yell, he knelt, and the system tried to shut him down. But his silence screamed through history. Chosen ones are dangerous, not when they speak, but when they stand. You've been wondering why the spiritual warfare is increasing, why your peace gets attacked, why your rest feels short. Have you considered that your very presence is dismantling what they spent years trying to build? You walk into a room and their false foundations start to shake. You didn't do anything, you just are. That's what it means to be chosen. And still some of you shrink. You hide your light. You sit in rooms too small for the weight of your spirit just to make others feel safe. Why every time you diminish yourself to fit into a system you were sent to disrupt? You betray your assignment. Matthew chapter 5 verse 14 proclaims that you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Chosen one, stop dimming your fire. You were never meant to blend into the background. You are the hill, not the valley. Think of Harriet Tubman. She wasn't just a conductor on the Underground Railroad. She was the system breaker. She moved in silence, guided by divine whispers, freeing hundreds without being caught. You carry that same spiritual GPS. You're not lost. You're being hidden for impact. So here's the truth. Your pain wasn't random. Your setbacks weren't punishments. Your delays weren't denials. They were all part of your cosmic coding, training you to operate off-grid with vision they can't hack, with strength they can't weaken. Daniel chapter 2 verse 22 reveals that he uncovers deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with him. God hid you to refine you. Now he's about to reveal you, to confound them. You were never crazy for feeling like you didn't fit. You weren't emotional. You were spiritually attuned. You didn't lose people. You were filtered. You weren't defeated. You were being positioned. Take Keanu Reeves. Quiet, unassuming, yet wildly countercultural. While others chase fame, he gives away millions. He's dangerous, not because of his image, but because of the peace and principle he carries in a noisy world. That's you, chosen one. So let them run, let them whisper, let them throw shade. You don't need to argue with shadows when your entire life radiates light. The ones who tried to destroy you are now haunted by the fact that they couldn't. And that's why they're running, not from you, but from what your presence reflects in them. You were never part of their blueprint. You are the divine disruption, the cosmic earthquake, the walking contradiction to their carefully crafted illusions. Let me leave you with this. Why keep apologizing for the power God gave you? Why keep explaining your presence when your existence already speaks prophecy? You are not here to please the program. You are here to prove it can be broken. So rise, move, disrupt, illuminate. The system was never built for you to fit in. It was built to fall when you walk through. You're the proof that every attack was wasted. And that's why they're losing sleep. Chosen one. Let's be honest. Do you realize how much energy was spent trying to break you? Do you know how many meetings, rumors, silent betrayals, and underhanded plots were formed just to dim your light? And yet, here you are, not only alive, but wiser, sharper, more spiritually armed than ever. You are not a survivor. You are living, breathing, undeniable proof that every weapon aimed at you was wasted ammunition. They didn't just fail to destroy you. They accidentally created their worst nightmare, a version of you that can no longer be controlled, manipulated, or disrespected. You were the one they dismissed, the one they thought would break in the silence. But now, the very silence they mistook for weakness has become your most dangerous weapon. Genesis chapter 5, verse 2. 0 confirms that what they meant for evil, God used for good to bring about this present result, to preserve many lives. Their betrayal became your blueprint. Their mockery became your motivation. Their doubt became your fuel. Just like Oprah Winfrey, abused, rejected, and told she'd never make it in television until she rewrote the rules of the media game. They tried to tear her down, but they didn't realize they were helping her rise. And isn't that exactly what's happened to you? So tell me, why do you still question if you're worthy of the stage you're standing on now? You're not walking around with bitterness. You're walking with receipts. You've got evidence. Every scar has a story. Every loss built muscle. Every exit became elevation. You are the counterpunch they didn't see coming. They thought you were done. But every time they watched, you rose from the ashes of what they tried to burn. You remind them that their fire wasn't strong enough, that their lies weren't deep enough, that their gossip wasn't viral enough to stop a soul chosen by heaven. Matthew chapter 5 verse 15 states that no one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. They tried to hide you, but chosen ones don't dim, they shine, and your shine is a spotlight on their falsehood. Let's talk about Tyler Perry. Homeless, laughed at, rejected, and yet, he built a billion-dollar empire rooted in faith and forgiveness. He didn't need revenge, he needed vision. That's what you carry. 2. Not a heart full of spite, but a soul full of purpose. And still, they pretend not to see you. They ghost you, scroll past your blessings, and whisper behind closed doors. But their silence is loud. Their avoidance is heavy. Why? Because your growth is a mirror, and the reflection it gives is brutal truth. Your rise reminds them that they lost badly. Psalm chapter 23 verse 5 declares that He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You don't need to clap back. God already set the table. You just need to show up, chosen one. Why do they avoid eye contact now? Why do they watch from fake accounts and say nothing? Because deep down, they know you saw them before they saw themselves. You felt the betrayal coming, and you didn't react with vengeance. You evolved. They thought silence was surrender, but in your case, silence was strategy. They came for your peace and ended up watering your power. They came for your name and ended up giving you legacy. Every stone they threw became a stepping stone. Every door they slammed just redirected you toward divine entryways they could never access. Psalm chapter 118 verse 22 proclaims that the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. They didn't just fail, they helped crown you. Malcolm X once said, "The future belongs to those who prepare for it today, and despite the chaos around you, you kept preparing in the dark, in the pain, when no one believed. You believed anyway. That's why the storms didn't sink you. They baptized you. That's why they're scared, because now they see it. The prophecy wasn't in your words, it was in your endurance." But let's get real. Why are you still letting the memory of their doubt take up space in your mind? The war is over. The victory is visible. The lesson is learned. Let go of the ghosts. They don't belong in the room your future is building. You're not lucky. You're locked in. You're not just chosen. You're activated. Your presence makes liars feel exposed. Manipulators feel seen. And cowards feel confronted. Because you don't operate off popularity. You operate off purpose. Look at Lady Gaga, mocked for being different, labeled too eccentric, too emotional, too much. But it was her too much that changed culture. And you too were never meant to be just enough. You were always meant to shake the system. And here's the real twist. They didn't break you. They baptized you into boldness. The version of you walking the earth now doesn't beg for room. You build it. You don't ask for respect. You embody it. You don't fear solitude. You wield it like a sword. They fired every shot, and you're still standing. Not angry, not bitter, just laser-focused and spiritually refined. That's not survival. That's domination. That's not endurance. That's evidence. Psalm chapter 23 verse 4 affirms that even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, chosen one. You walked through hell with your hands empty, and you came back holding revelation. So no more shrinking, no more doubting, no more apologizing for outgrowing people who were only meant to be footnotes in your story. Your very existence has become the echo of everything they tried and failed to silence. You are the counterattack they never expected. You are the mirror they can't unsee. You are the disruption they hoped would go away. And now, the real question is this: why waste another second explaining your divine assignment to people who weren't even sent to understand it? Let them hide. Let them scroll in silence. Let them tell the world you don't matter while secretly obsessing over every move you make, because deep down, they know the truth. They didn't just lose you. They activated you. You don't need their approval. You don't need their permission. You don't even need closure. All you need is alignment. And guess what? You're already in it. So rise boldly, walk fully, build loudly, because the real revenge is becoming everything they swore you'd never be. You are not just still here, you are undeniable, and that is more dangerous than they ever imagined. You're not their villain, you're not their victim, you're the architect, And that's why they're scared. Chosen one. Let's be clear. Have you noticed how they tried to box you in first? They wanted to paint you as the fragile victim, too broken to rise. Then, when you refused to stay low, they switched up and tried to brand you as the villain. But the truth is far more powerful than either label. You are neither. You are the architect, the one they never saw coming. You don't need to defend your reputation because you're too busy designing a reality. You don't fit their stories because you were never written in their script. While they cast roles based on control, you walked off stage and started sketching new blueprints from the ruins. You're not rebuilding for revenge. You're rebuilding because your vision demands it. Have you ever realized that the reason they fear you is because they can't figure out your next move? That's what makes you dangerous. Psalm chapter 127 verse 1 states that unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. You're not just building alone. You're building with divine instruction. And that's why it's unstoppable. Take J.K. Rowling, for example, homeless, rejected by multiple publishers, and nearly invisible to the world. But in the quiet, she wrote. In the silence, she created. In the rejection, she drafted legacy. Her life wasn't about revenge, it was about recreation. And so is yours. They couldn't trap you in victimhood, and now they can't handle your vision. That's why they're uncomfortable with your silence, why they feel offended by your peace, why they try to twist your glow up into arrogance. You're not playing small anymore, and it terrifies those who needed you to stay broken to feel powerful. They say you've changed, and you have, but not because of bitterness, because of boundaries. Not because you want power, but because you finally remembered who you are. Do you know what happens when a chosen one stops playing along with someone else's broken narrative? A new world begins. Isaiah chapter 43 verse 19 declares that God is doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? God isn't recycling your past. He's building something brand new, and He made you the architect of it. Think of Nelson Mandela. They tried to bury him under decades of captivity, tried to erase his influence, but he came out of prison not with a grudge, but with a strategy. He wasn't their victim. He was the builder of a new nation. That's what a chosen one does. That's what you were doing. Every silent season you endured became your foundation. Every back turn became a window you no longer look through. And every betrayal reinforced the fortress you're constructing now. They thought rejection would ruin you, but it refined your discernment. They thought isolation would crush you, but it only clarified your voice. Proverbs chapter 24 verse 3 confirms that by wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established. You didn't just survive, you became wise. You didn't just rebuild, you recalibrated your entire path. And the most lethal part of your transformation, you stopped waiting to be saved. You stopped waiting for someone to come rescue you. That illusion shattered. There was no cavalry, no miracle crowd, just you and the God who whispered, "Start building anyway." Let's talk about Frida Kahlo, crushed by pain, betrayed in love, limited in body, but she used every wound as color for her canvas. She didn't deny her pain. She infused it with purpose. That's what you're doing, brick by brick, scar by scar, not with bitterness, but with brilliance. You're not healed because everything is fixed. You're healed because you accepted that the cracks let the light in. Have you stopped to honor how far you've come? Have you recognized that the rooms you're designing now are places of purpose, not performance? And no, you're not loud, you're not vengeful, you're not bitter, but you're firm, you're rooted, you're awake. You're not trying to sit at someone else's table. You're building your own with chairs carved from resilience and vision no one else dared to hold. Proverbs chapter 14 verse 1 states that the wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands, the foolish one tears hers down. You've chosen to be the builder. That's why the whispers don't matter. That's why the distance others create no longer wounds you. Look at Steve Jobs, fired from his own company, mocked, misunderstood. But what did he do? He went quiet and built Pixar. He went quiet and redesigned Apple. He didn't chase applause, he chased alignment. And when he returned, the whole world had to adjust to the vision he never stopped nurturing. They still don't understand how you rose. They didn't see the sketches in the dark, the prayers in the silence, the moments where it was just you, your wounds, and your God. And yet you kept building, not fast, but strong, not for approval, but for purpose. Now the structure is rising, and they're stuck outside, wondering how you did it, wondering how the same storms they sent to break you became the materials you used to build something indestructible. So why are you still explaining your peace to people who benefit from your confusion? Why are you still trying to validate your calling to those who weren't assigned to walk it? The answer is simple. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Not when you're the one laying the bricks. Not when your entire journey has been proof that God doesn't need crowds to construct miracles. He just needs one chosen one who won't quit. This path isn't soft, it's sacred, it's quiet, it's holy, and it's yours. Those who belong to your destiny will recognize the structure, and those who walked away, they were never meant to walk through the doors you're now designing. Let them think you're distant. Let them say you're too serious, too quiet, too different. That's fine. Architects don't always explain the design until the building is finished. You're not their villain. You're not their victim. You're the architect of your evolution. Let them watch, let them wonder. But know this, they will either respect the structure or remain on the outside. And that's not ego, that's excellence, that's divine design, that's chosen. You don't even have to speak. Your presence screams what they tried to bury, chosen one. Have you ever noticed how people shift the moment you walk into a room? The glances, the sudden awkwardness, the way conversations twist and energy bends. Not because you've said a word, but because your presence is a loud truth in a world that thrives on lies. You don't have to speak. You don't have to defend. You don't even have to look their way. Your presence does the talking. And what it says, it screams every truth they've tried to bury. You're not walking in with vengeance in your eyes. You're not coming for payback. You don't have to. Your growth is enough. Your evolution is the haunting. Why? Because when the chosen rise, it convicts those who chose comfort over character. You're not their enemy, but you're their mirror, and your reflection doesn't flatter. It exposes. Isaiah chapter 60 verse 1 proclaims that you should arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Your glow isn't just personal, it's prophetic. It radiates from every healed wound, every boundary enforced, every betrayal that taught you to rise instead of retreat. Think about Maya Angelou. She didn't scream her pain. She wrote it. She turned her silence into a legacy that made generations tremble with recognition. Her presence on a stage didn't just recite poetry. It unraveled lies. Like you. Her existence alone reminded people of the work they refused to do within themselves. So why do they suddenly feel small in your presence? Why do the ones who laughed before now avoid your eyes? It's not fear of what you'll say. It's fear of what your success says without words. You are the living contradiction to every label they tried to stamp on you. And that truth, it's unbearable. Your boundaries once made them accuse you of bitterness. Your silence once made them call you weak. But now, your peace, it echoes like thunder. You didn't rise to make a statement. You became the statement. The storm didn't drown you. It trained you. And now the same waters they thought would end you are the ones you're walking on with power. Psalm chapter 27 verse 1 declares that the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? You don't enter rooms seeking validation. You carry revelation, the kind that silences noise and forces truth to rise from the cracks. Let's talk about Bo Burnham. After stepping back from fame, he returned with truth-laced work that struck nerves worldwide, not because he yelled, but because he reflected the hidden decay with unsettling honesty. He walked back into the room with stillness that roared. That's you now. You don't need applause. You're the awakening. They feel guilty, not because you punish them, but because your healing removed their illusion of control. They can no longer gaslight the version of you that knows who you are. You no longer fold under pressure. You stand as pressure, and their discomfort, it's self-created. You didn't give it to them. Their own lack of growth did. 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7 confirms that God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. You are walking power, composed, unshakable. That's why they tremble. Not because you're aggressive, but because you're aligned. Look at Misty Copeland, the first black female principal dancer in American ballet theater. She didn't rage. She didn't retaliate. She trained. She disciplined. And her every move on stage became a reminder of the lies they told, that someone like her couldn't belong. Your presence carries the same weight. It reminds people what discipline looks like when it's been through fire. Chosen one. Understand this. You didn't come this far to shrink in rooms built on lies. You came to fill every corner with presence. The kind that doesn't need to boast. The kind that makes the fake scatter like dust. You're no longer desperate for connection. You're rooted in conviction, and your silence, it's sacred ground. Do you remember the seasons when they dismissed you as too sensitive, too deep, too emotional? That wasn't a weakness. That was wisdom maturing in silence. They thought you were drowning, but you were learning to breathe underwater. And now you rise without noise, without permission, without apology, because you finally realize you never needed their approval. You only needed alignment. You don't have to defend your journey to those who took no part in your healing. The rooms you walk into now, they're not stages for performance. They're platforms for presence. Psalm chapter 23 verse 5 reiterates that He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. They don't have to like it, but they have to witness it. And that witnessing, that's the weight they carry now. Think about Virgil Abloh, a quiet, creative force. He didn't scream to be seen. His work broke barriers without needing explanation. He changed fashion forever, subtly, steadily, unapologetically. Like you, he let vision speak louder than voice, and now the world watches even in his absence. So, chosen one, why walk in soft when you carry thunder in your spirit? Why dim for those who were never meant to understand your frequency? Every time you apologize for taking up space, you betray the version of you that fought to exist. Your evolution is not revenge, it's revelation. It's the byproduct of what happens when a soul refuses to die in the dirt. When it chooses to rise without bitterness and walk in peace without permission. Let them flinch. Let them squirm. Let them look away. That's not your burden. That's their consequence. You're not responsible for their guilt. You're not required to carry their shame. What you carry is presence earned through pain, purified by process, and anointed by calling. So the next time you enter a room and feel the shift, smile. That shift is your confirmation. That tension is your testimony. You're no longer someone they can ignore. You're the prophecy walking in silence. You're the consequence of everything they tried and failed to bury. They tried to plant you in shallow ground, hoping you'd never rise, but they forgot. God never needed a spotlight to grow a seed. He just needed surrender. You surrendered. You submitted. You transformed. And now, chosen one, you don't just carry presence, you are the presence. Kas, unshakable, unapologetic, unstoppable. Let the silence thunder. Let the peace roar. Let your calm be the storm they never saw coming. The trauma didn't break you. It built your blueprint for power, chosen one. Have you ever stopped and looked at how far you've come? Not in distance, but in depth. Do you realize what you've done with the pain they tossed at you like trash? You turned it into architecture. They tried to bury you beneath the weight of it, hoping you'd disappear beneath the rubble. But instead, you studied it, you dissected it, you turned it into blueprints. You didn't just survive it, you engineered your evolution through it. Let's be honest, this wasn't luck. This was divine design. This was strategy. The trauma they hoped would define you became the very structure of your power. Every sleepless night became another brick. Every betrayal became a load-bearing beam. Every loss became a lesson in spiritual mathematics. You no longer ask, "Why me?" You ask, "What did that teach me?" Romans chapter 5 verses 3 through 4 states that we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. You didn't escape the storm. You learned to build within it. And now, the foundation under your feet is unshakable. Think of Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor who turned his trauma into the cornerstone of his life's work, teaching the world that meaning can rise even from the most brutal suffering. He didn't escape pain. He mined it for purpose, and like you, he came out with strategy, not just scars. So are you still calling what happened to you a failure? Or have you begun to see it for what it really was? A formation chosen ones don't heal by accident. They evolve with intention. You didn't just heal, you built a spiritual system. You turned pain into precision. You turned breakdowns into divine blueprints. They didn't see it happening. They saw you grow quiet and thought you gave up. What they didn't realize is that in the silence, you were scripting your comeback. You stopped bleeding for people who handed you the knife. You stopped reacting and started responding. Calm, calculated, and cloaked in wisdom. Proverbs chapter 14 verse 16 confirms that the wise are cautious and turn away from evil. But a fool is reckless and careless. You're not distant, you're disciplined. You're not cold, you're clear. Let's talk about Bethany Hamilton, the professional surfer who lost her arm in a shark attack. Most people would have given up, but she studied her trauma like a champion studies film. She returned to the waves, not as a victim, but as a warrior. She didn't just survive, she dominated. You're doing the same, just in your own ocean. They used to confuse your tears for weakness, but now you've realized tears were data. Pain was instruction, grief was groundwork, and the silence was God's classroom. You learn to read energy before words. You can feel betrayal now in the space between syllables. You no longer get blindsided because you studied the pattern, and now you move like prophecy wrapped in pattern recognition. Psalm chapter 119 verse 66 states that you should teach me good judgment and knowledge. For I believe in your commandments now. Your intuition doesn't whisper, it roars, and they feel it before you even say a word. Think of Robert Downey Jr. His trauma was public, his breakdown televised, but he didn't die there. He rebuilt quietly, intentionally. Now he's not just an actor, he's a franchise, a symbol of comeback culture. You've done that. 2. You're not surviving, you're reigning, chosen one. How many nights did you want to quit? And yet instead of falling apart, you built something, not flashy, not for Instagram, but solid, sacred. You stopped chasing applause and started collecting wisdom. And now you're not triggered, you're tuned in. You're not defensive, you're directed. You don't explain anymore. You simply exit because exits are now revelations. You finally understand that peace isn't given, it's earned. Psalm chapter 147 verse 3 confirms that he heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. And he didn't just heal you, he taught you how to heal yourself with him. That's what scares them. Because now you don't flinch, you don't beg, you observe, you discern, you decide. Think about Serena Williams. For years, people tried to reduce her to emotion, anger, and misunderstanding. But she never played their game. She studied the court, she studied them, and she rewrote the rules through excellence. That's what chosen ones do. You're not triggered anymore, you're trained. You now understand that every boundary you set is backed by data. Every no is backed by history. You're not being rude, you're being resurrected. You don't announce your next move, you execute it. While others are stuck in loops, you're designing systems. While they're playing for attention, you're playing for legacy. And let's be honest, why do you still think you owe anyone an explanation for the version of you that fought through fire, just to breathe. You don't owe them access to the blueprint that nearly cost you your soul. They gave you pain. You gave yourself purpose. They walked away. You walked inward. And in that inner space, you met God, strategy, and silence. And all three taught you how to reign. Genesis chapter 50 verse 20 reiterates that you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done. Now look at you, focused, calm, calculated, not because you're cold, but because you're called, not because you're guarded, but because you've grown. So let them wonder why you move the way you do now. Let them label you distant, mysterious, even intimidating. They'll never understand the kind of clarity that comes after you've wrestled demons in silence and came out with blueprints. While they gossip, you're governing. While they analyze you, you're advancing. While they guess, you build. You are not stuck. You are strategic. You are not broken. You are brilliant. You are not what happened to you. You are what you chose to become in spite of it. So stay quiet, stay intentional, stay anointed. You don't have to prove a thing because your evolution is the proof. You don't speak loudly anymore because your very presence carries the voice of every battle you've already won. Let them talk. Let them guess. While they recycle their patterns, you're rewriting the entire board. You've turned trauma into technology, pain into precision, and now you sit on the throne they never saw coming, quiet, grounded, chosen. They tried to bury you in silence, but you turned it into a throne, chosen one. Have you realized yet that what they thought would break you only revealed what you were truly made of? They didn't exile you. They accidentally crowned you. They thought stripping you of attention, withdrawing affection, and replacing connection with silence would destroy you. But silence doesn't shatter the chosen. Silence awakens them. You weren't cast out. You were called higher. What if the isolation you feared was actually initiation? What if solitude was never punishment, but promotion? While they whispered in corners and vanished from your life, you were being refined in silence. They assumed you'd beg for attention, but God was teaching you to command presence without ever raising your voice. Luke chapter 5 verse 16 mentions that Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Even the Savior sought solitude, not because he was hiding, but because that's where divine strategy is revealed. Look at Leonardo da Vinci, the genius behind timeless masterpieces. He didn't rise in crowds. He sketched in silence, studied in solitude, built legacies in obscurity. He didn't rush the process. He let silence shape the vision, just like you. You were left alone, not to be forgotten, but to be formed. They called it isolation, but you felt the shift, didn't you? You weren't abandoned. You were consecrated. That sacred quiet season, the one that hurt, confused, and emptied you, was actually where your greatest clarity was born. You weren't losing people. You were gaining presence, and that shift didn't just save you, it separated you. 2 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 17 declares that you should come out from among them and be separate. Says the Lord, chosen ones are always called away before they're revealed. That's not rejection. That's preparation. So was it really abandonment, or was it alignment? Every back turn gave you space to breathe. Every closed door forced you inward, where you found the voice of God echoing in your own spirit. They thought pulling away would starve your soul, but your roots were never fed by popularity. They were fed by purpose. While they needed validation to feel valuable, you discovered peace that doesn't require applause. That's silence. It became your sanctuary. That loneliness, it became your loyalty to truth. That exile, it became your elevation. You began to understand that you don't need a crowd to be powerful. You only need clarity. Consider Emily Dickinson, one of the greatest poets in history. She barely left her house. Her solitude wasn't her limitation, it was her liberation. She wrote with unmatched insight because she lived within, not outside. She wasn't overlooked. She was ahead of her time. So are you. Exodus chapter 14 verse 14 confirms that the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Stillness isn't weakness, it's spiritual weaponry. It trains your ears to hear what noise drowns out. Chosen one. How many people ghosted you only to later watch you shine from a distance? How many walked away thinking you'd wither only to see you rooted deeper than ever before? They didn't just lose your presence. They lost access to the divine process. And now you've mastered the art of moving in sacred silence. You no longer chase. You no longer explain. You don't return to closed doors, because in the silence, you learn the difference between absence and assignment. Do you know what happens when a chosen soul learns how to build alone? They become untouchable, unshakable, unmistakable. Look at Elon Musk, criticized, mocked, doubted. Yet he built quietly, distantly, relentlessly. While the world speculated, he executed. He didn't move for applause. He moved for alignment. That's what chosen ones do. And that's what you became. You now understand that peace is expensive, and its price is often separated. Not because others were evil, but because your calling is specific. You don't carry average energy. That's why average company couldn't walk with you. You weren't made for crowds. You were made for assignments. And assignments come with solitude. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verse 6 states that better is a handful of quietness than 2 hands full of toil and a striving after wind. You've stopped striving. You've started stewarding. And what you're stewarding now is sacred. While they were trying to replace your presence, you were becoming irreplaceable. Every lesson you learned in the dark is now echoing in your light. You're not scared of being alone anymore. You revere it. You don't flinch when people vanish. You discern the meaning of their exit and bless it. Because solitude didn't make you hard. It made you holy. It didn't make you bitter. It made you balanced. It didn't weaken your spirit. It made you wise beyond explanation. Take Greta Thunberg, a teenage girl who stood alone at first, protesting for the climate while others mocked her stillness. She didn't need company to start a movement. Her clarity came through separation. Your impact is the same. You don't need agreement to begin. You only need alignment. Now you walk into rooms with no desperation. You bring stillness, not to be seen, but to shift the atmosphere. People feel your energy before they ever hear your voice, and what they feel, it's unbothered, it's resolved, it's focused. So let them label you cold. Let them say you've changed. They're right. You have, because you finally understand that presence is not a gift. It's a privilege. You've stopped offering yourself to confusion. You've stopped apologizing for being unavailable to noise. Isaiah chapter 30 verse 15 confirms that in returning and rest, you shall be saved. In quietness and in trust shall be your strength. Your strength wasn't found in striving. It was born in stillness. You don't need to raise your voice anymore. You've become the frequency itself. Let them whisper. Let them question. Let them observe in silence. While they look for you in the places you used to be, you've outgrown them all. You don't sit at tables just to eat. You build them. And now, only those who've mastered their own stillness will be seated beside you. They thought you'd break in silence. Instead, you were reborn in it. Let them see the throne you built from the quiet they tried to use as a cage. Let them witness the elevation that came from separation. They walked away and heaven moved in. You're no longer hiding. You're harnessing. You're no longer begging. You're building. You're no longer trying to be heard. You are the sound. So take your seat. Chosen one. The silence that once felt like exile. It was sacred strategy. And now the throne belongs to you. Your intuition doesn't just whisper. It sees in 4K while others are still buffering. Chosen one. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the shift before a single word was spoken? Have you noticed how your spirit tightens, your energy pulls back, and your mind sharpens, all without any external evidence? That's not imagination. That's not paranoia. That's discernment. That's your divine surveillance system tuned to a frequency few even realize exists. You don't just sense things, you know. You feel betrayal while it's still rehearsing its "I got your back" speech. You catch deception before it's spoken. Your spirit picks up spiritual static before the situation even unfolds. And that knowing, it's not weakness, it's protection. It's the high-definition radar of a soul sharpened by trials, betrayal, and divine assignments. Hebrews chapter 5 verse 14 states that solid food is for the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. You didn't wake up with this gift. You trained for it. Every heartbreak became a lesson. Every silence a sharpening stone. Let's talk about Harriet Tubman. She didn't have GPS, but she had spiritual sight. Her intuition saved lives. She knew when danger was close and when to pivot because her discernment wasn't academic. It was divine, like you. She didn't just move through the dark. She navigated it with precision. People say you're too distant now, that you've changed, that you no longer trust easily. And isn't that the point? You've been through too much to entertain vibrations that feel off. You've seen too many smiles with knives behind them. You don't guess anymore. You know. You don't need proof. You are the proof. You don't wait to be betrayed. You sense the shift before the act. That's not being cold. That's being called. Your spirit learned to listen when others ignored the signs. How many times did you feel the danger before you could explain it? And how many times were you right? Proverbs chapter 2 verse 6 confirms that the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. You don't just carry intuition, you carry divine downloads. Your soul hears things human ears miss. Think of Princess Diana, surrounded by charm, yet she sensed to something deeper. Her interviews revealed that while people smiled, she knew the energy was dark. She followed her instincts, not the optics. That's you now. No longer swayed by presentation. You're moved only by truth. They think you're overthinking, but your gut has never lied to you. You've walked with betrayal close enough to recognize its cologne. You no longer second-guess your chills, your warnings, or that quiet discomfort that shows up without cause. Because you've lived through too many, I should have trusted my gut moments to ever ignore it again. You don't need drama. You don't need receipts. You exit quietly now. You cut off access the moment your spirit says this isn't safe. You don't do goodbyes for ghosts. You protect your peace. Proverbs chapter 4 verse 23 declares that above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. That's not cold. That's wise. That's divine instruction to a chosen one with an assignment too valuable to be distracted by deception. Consider Bruce Lee. His discipline didn't just come from physical training, but spiritual awareness. He sensed energy, predicted movement, and responded with perfect timing. That's the spiritual intelligence you now move with. You don't rush. You don't react. You read the energy and then act with clarity. And yes, people will call you too intense, too guarded, or too distant. Let them. They didn't walk through what you did. They didn't carry knives in their bag with a smile on their face. They didn't learn to trust silence over promises. You did. You're not cold. You're calibrated. And here's the truth. Your intuition came at a cost. It cost you your innocence. It cost you your comfort. It cost you old relationships and superficial friendships. But it brought you clarity. It brought you freedom. It brought you peace. And now you guard that peace like gold. Jeremiah chapter 33 verse 3 states that you should call me, and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. God is not just revealing the obvious to you. He's giving you advanced sight, insight, foresight, spirit-led knowledge. Ever heard of Malcolm Gladwell? His concept of thin slicing is all about how experts make split-second decisions based on intuition. He studied it as science. You live it as a spirit, while others are waiting for evidence. You're already moving. That's how chosen ones operate. You sense, you shift, you survive, and you lead. So why second guess what God gave you? Why apologize for knowing what you know without explanation? When your spirit says leave, you don't need a meeting. You need movement. When your soul tightens around someone's presence, you don't need to argue. You need distance. That's wisdom. That's protection. That's being chosen. Let them lie. Let them hide. Let them pretend. You don't need to catch them in the act when your spirit already has the full download. You don't expose people to hurt them. You walk away to protect yourself. And that's not bitterness. It's balanced. So here's the question. Why would you ever ignore the very system God installed to protect you? Why would you shrink your gift to fit a world still fumbling in spiritual blindness? Your discernment isn't arrogance, it's armor. Your knowing isn't judgment, it's justice. And your instincts, they've saved your life more than once. So don't explain, don't defend, just discern and move. They say trust has to be earned, but for you, alignment has to be proven, energy has to be felt, and if it's off, it's off. You don't wait for betrayal anymore. You document patterns. You log inconsistencies. You file red flags. Not because you're paranoid, but because you're prepared. You don't chase truth anymore. You carry it. So stand tall in that. Trust your inner compass. Let your intuition be your sword, your shield, and your strategy. Because when you're chosen, the war isn't just outside. It's energetic, spiritual, unseen. And you've been anointed to see what others deny. You don't guess, you know. And that's why you win. You didn't just break chains. You burned the whole blueprint, chosen one. Do you understand the magnitude of what you did? You didn't just escape your past. You rewrote the entire narrative. You weren't just the first to wake up. You were the first to refuse to stay asleep. While everyone else passed down pain and called it tradition, you looked the cycle in the face and said, "This ends with me." They called you rebellious, difficult, defiant. But the truth is, you were dangerous to the pattern they swore could never be broken. You were the glitch in the bloodline, the holy interruption, the generational firewall. And that's why they whispered about you instead of applauding you. Because you didn't just defy a person, you defied a system. Genesis chapter 50 verse 20 declares that you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. You didn't just survive the dysfunction, you transformed it. You stood in the ruins and began building what no one else dared to imagine. Look at Maya Moore, the WNBA superstar who left a championship career at its peak to fight for justice and help free a wrongfully convicted man. That wasn't just courage, that was a holy disruption. Like you. She didn't just rise, she intervened. She made a legacy out of interruption. Have you ever wondered why your battles felt heavier than anyone else's? It's because you weren't just fighting for yourself. You were cancelling contracts made before you were even born. You were confronting shadows that wore your family's last name. You stood alone in rooms that suffocated others, and you breathed anyway. While others clung to shame and silence, you stood up with truth. You chose growth over tradition. You chose healing over hiding. And they hated you for it. Not because you were wrong, but because your freedom forced them to see their chains. 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 3 confirms that though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. You weren't just in a personal battle, you were in a spiritual war, one that required your very bloodline to shift. Think about Malcolm X. He wasn't trying to fit in. He was called to disrupt, to dismantle, to re-educate. His presence was controversial, not because it was flawed, but because it was uncompromising, like you. He didn't come to play polite games. He came to end systems built on falsehoods. They may never give you credit. That's okay because legacy doesn't require permission. You don't need validation from the very people who needed you to be silent to survive. You weren't built for their comfort. You were built for breakthrough. John chapter 1 verse 5 states that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. You brought light into places that had only known shadows, and light will always be attacked by the darkness it threatens. And just like that, you became the one they could never predict, never control, and never fully erase. You didn't just break chains, you destroyed the blueprint. And now they live with the knowledge that someone did what they were too scared to try. Let them resent your rise. Deep down, they know you were the one, not just different, not just defiant, but sent. And that will echo for generations. You stopped explaining, and that made you unmanageable. Chosen one. Let's be real. Have you noticed how your silence now speaks louder than your explanations ever did? The moment you stopped over-explaining yourself, everything shifted. You stopped trying to be understood, and you became undeniable. There was a time when you twisted yourself to be palatable. You watered yourself down so others could digest you. You stayed soft in rooms that deserved your sharpness, but that version of you is gone, dead, and buried beneath layers of self-respect and sacred clarity. Matthew chapter 7 verse 6 warns that you should not throw your pearls before swine, or they will trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. You finally realized your worth wasn't a debate, it was a declaration, and you stopped offering pearls to people who only valued noise. Look at James Baldwin. He didn't ask permission to be profound. He didn't explain the truth to people determined to misunderstand it. He wrote it. He lived it. He left it behind like fire, and the world had to catch up. That's you now. You don't chase understanding. You embody truth. You stopped apologizing for your presence. You stopped explaining your boundaries. You stopped trying to make people comfortable while you were suffocating. Now you move with intention, with purpose, with stillness that scares shallow minds. Proverbs chapter 17 verse 28 states that even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent, and discerning if he holds his tongue. Your silence is not absence, it's strategy, and it's terrifying to those who can no longer read you. You built your own arena. You stopped knocking on doors that were never yours and built gates only discernment can open. Now they wonder, why can't we reach them anymore? Why do they seem untouchable? It's simple. Because you stopped playing small. You stopped seeking entry into rooms you were born to own. Think of Dave Chappelle. He walked away from millions because the cost of his peace was too high. And when he returned, he did it on his terms. No apologies, no explanations. That's what you've done. You've reclaimed your narrative without needing to justify the chapters you had to burn. They say you've changed, and you have. You stopped asking, do they like me? And started asking, does this align with who I am? You don't shrink for acceptance anymore. You expand in authority. You no longer bend to fit. You rise to lead. Matthew chapter 5 verse 37 declares that you should let your yes be yes and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. You've stopped dancing around clarity. Your presence now communicates what words never could. Take Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. When her truth didn't fit the mold, she didn't silence herself. She reshaped the mold. She didn't explain her power, she wore it. That's your new stance. Power doesn't explain. It simply is. You're no longer predictable, no longer manageable, no longer someone they can box in. And that shift, that unapologetic clarity, is your ultimate rebellion.